you discover the genre you're writing?
We can help with that. Hello and welcome to Writing Momentum. I'm Christopher Maselli. I'm here with my wife Gina. Gina,
Hey.
how are you and what are we talking about?
I am doing really well, and I'm
Yay.
very excited. Just for you guys that don't know, this is our third attempt at this podcast today.
You know what we discovered is that when you record a podcast, you need to turn the microphone on. You won't believe how far you can get into recording a podcast and then discover the microphone isn't even on.
So we're talking today. We'll go back to what
Multiple
we're really
times.
talking about
Yes.
again. What is genre?
What
we're
is
talking
genre?
about genre. We're talking about what it is and why it's important. So
Yeah.
What is genre, Chris?
So I like to think of it this way. If I walk into a bookstore and I know I want to read a mystery, I will look for the mystery aisle. The mystery aisle is where it's a genre. It's a category. It's a classification of all the books in that aisle, right? And they all have some similarities in their form and their style, their subject matter, that sort of thing. And it helps bookstores gather the books together, and it helps us know what a book kind of is, right?
Right.
What it's not necessarily about, but the kind of things we can expect when we read that book.
Yeah, so it really is about not only for the author to be able to say, this is what my book is, but also for a bookseller, even an online bookseller,
Yeah.
to be able to say, oh, we know where to place this or how to list it so that the readers can find it. So it really does help both the author, but also the bookseller on the other end.
Yeah, Amazon, we've said before, it has something like over 600 categories, okay? Those are essentially narrowed down genres, right? So it might start with mystery, and then it'll say cozy mystery or mystery thriller or something like that, and it'll narrow it down. So there are literally hundreds of genres. There's probably only a handful to start off with, and then you go deeper and deeper the more
The subgenres.
yeah, more and more to subgenres. And it's important to know what your book's going to be. So like for fiction, you might say, I've got a mystery, or I've got a romance, or a fantasy, or science fiction, or historical fiction. And that's kind of the place that you're going to start.
Yeah. I've even gotten into, as I've read fiction before, fiction that is maybe a mystery that's based in a specific locale.
Yeah.
So it can get that specific. So if you are someone who loves, I think I got into Low Country, which is in South Carolina, I believe. But it was Low Country mysteries for a while. And it was fun because I was learning all about these different places in South Carolina and in that area, whether it was the food that was influencing the fiction, whether it was the locations, whether it was the way of life, the culture, that kind of thing. And for a while, I really got into that, and it was just really fun. So that was a very niche subgenre of fiction that I kind of got into.
So are genres only for fiction?
No.
They're not.
Fiction, we think about fiction a lot of times when we think about genres, but for nonfiction, it's the same thing. It really is where is this going to appear in this bookstore? Is it going to be in the biography section? Is it going to be in the memoir? Is it going to be in self-help, travel, history, theology, or religion? Where is it going to be? Geography? There's all these different categories and shelves that these books are going to appear on. And so absolutely.
It's important because genre helps a store classify where to put the books so people can find you. Even online stores like Amazon, they group their books together, so it helps people find you. It also helps readers find the kind of books they like. So if they like reading a John Grisham book, they can see what kind of book that he wrote do I like. Is it a lawyer thriller, right? Then they can look for other lawyer thrillers, and if that's what you've written, it'll help them find you.
Right.
But it's also important for you to know
Right.
the kind of genre that you're writing.
Yeah, I think this is a question that comes up when we are talking to new writers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because so often when you talk to new writers, they will stop and kind of start to stammer and stutter when you ask them what their book is about, what the genre is that they're writing in. And it's because they're trying to classify their book in several different genres. They're kind of trying to do a mashup of all these different genres. And does that work?
They can mash up, right? You could have a book that is both historical and a thriller, right? So you could mash up those two genres, so that works. But there are sometimes things you can't mash up. So, for instance, sometimes when I'm talking to authors about the children's book they're writing, they'll say, well, it's like a picture book, but it's for middle graders. Well, usually picture books and middle graders, like those are two completely different genres, right? So you really need to know if you're writing a book, is it a picture book? Is it a chapter book? Is it a middle grade book? Is it a YA book? Those are all considered children's books.
Right.
But if you don't know the kind of book, the kind of genre you're trying to fit into, you're not going to probably be successful in that market because you don't know where it goes. The bookstores don't know where it goes, and people aren't going to know how to find you.
And the libraries don't know where it goes.
And the libraries don't.
When you're talking about children's books,
and
libraries are really, they're trying to figure out where do we put this book to find the reader.
And librarians are smart. And they don't know where to put it because we haven't identified the genre.
Well, and so I think children's books is a great example of this because with children's books, if you're writing a picture book, which is for what grade, what age? It's 4 to 6.
Usually, this could be 3 to 6, 4 to 6 years old, 3 to 5, right? So it's very young.
That is going to affect the vocabulary, the number of words that you use, the sentence structure that you might choose.
Even the subject matter, right? We know what kids are learning at those ages and what they're interested in. For instance, they might be very interested in dinosaurs, but they're not interested in murder mysteries. And so if you are trying to write a murder mystery in a picture book, it's going to be very hard to sell that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the elements, we've talked about children's books, but when you're talking about, think more generally, think more fiction or nonfiction, and I guess we'll focus on fiction. What are the elements that you need for identifying your genre?
Well, so I like to think of it in terms, and this helps you write better, right, too, and write faster. If you know what is expected in your genre, what the rules are, or here maybe is a better word, what the conventions are. What are the conventions of the genre that you're writing? Let me give you a for instance. I have written a superhero novel. In doing so, I researched what are the superhero conventions. And here's what you find. You find that, you know what? Almost all superheroes have an alter ego that's a secret identity. That's a convention. That's something that's in almost every superhero tale. Not all of them, but most of them. Almost all superhero tales have an arch enemy villain whose strength is the opposite of your hero, right? So that in that way, your hero has to find a way to defeat them with their strength being the superhero's weakness, and vice versa. The superhero's strength is the villain's weakness. And it makes for a much interesting plot. Knowing that, you can better construct your story. But if you're trying to just write a superhero book without knowing anything about the superhero conventions, it's going to be much harder to write. And boy, does it just come together once you start to hear those things, because you think, oh, okay, he's got to have a nemesis. I was wondering what to do about a nemesis. Yeah. Well, now I know the nemesis' strength has to be my hero's weakness. And it starts to come together. It becomes much easier to write. Same goes for romance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When you're writing romance, there needs to be two characters, right? That are coming together. They don't just come together, fall in love, and the rest is history. They have to come together, have some kind of conflict that happens that drives them apart. And often there's even a fear that they're working with that's underneath, that's kind of keeping them apart too. Or not just an external thing that's keeping them apart, but a lot of times there's an internal reason why they're not coming together. And
A rom-com, like a romantic comedy,
mhm,
there's always a character triangle, right? So you've
mhm,
always got
triangles.
one character and then two other characters, that one they're supposed to be with and one that's deterring them from being with that person,
Who
right?
looks like a good option.
Who looks like a good option, right? But this again, okay, so this is a convention of that genre. If you try to write a romance without some kind of convention, it doesn't have to be that third person in the triangle. That's not what we're talking about today, but just as a side note, the third person in the triangle doesn't have to be a person. It could be a vocation, right? That is drawing that person away. Whatever it is, there has to be some kind of triangle created. But if you try to write a romance without the triangle, it's going to be very tough going.
Well, not only is it going to be tough going, but it's going to be disappointing. And that's the big thing, that where this really affects you as the writer. I know we all want to create something new. We want to come up with new stories. We want to come up with something creative and unexpected. But if we veer too far out of our lane, it's going to become unsatisfying. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Dissatisfying. It's not going to be satisfying to your reader. And that's what you don't want. You want to be satisfying to your reader so that your readers think, oh my gosh, I love what he did last time. I'm going to look for his next book.
Right. And that the reason people become dissatisfied is because it lets down their expectations of the book and the genre, right? When I watch a superhero movie, most of the time I want the superhero to win in the end, right? In the rom-com or romance book, you want the characters to get together. Those are conventions, those are expectations that I have of that book. And that doesn't mean you have to follow that all the time, but that's the general rule. And you can break the rule, but not until you understand how it works.
It really does go back to this idea of you have to know the rules before you break them. And it's just so important that you have to understand, I would even say understand your primary genre, and then you can have a secondary one. We've talked about the mashup. We've talked about how you can have a book or a story that goes into more than one genre, and that's fine. But you really want to zero in on what that primary one is and make sure you hit all those points, and then add those other ones in for flavor. It's like adding spices to a beautiful soup. You're adding in those spices to make it a little bit different, to make it really your own, but you're still holding to the conventions of that primary genre.
Yeah. Gotta make that spicy soup. So here's one of the ingredients that I love for a spicy soup. It's a book called 20 Master Plots by Ronald Tobias. This is a fantastic book on helping you identify the genre that you're writing in and then following the conventions. What he does is he breaks down 20 different types of plots. Each one he breaks into a 3-act structure, and then within that 3-act structure, he shows you the kind of tropes you need to include. He shows you what generally is included so that you can put those into your own book. I have written books, entire novels, where I follow exactly the kind of direction that Tobias recommends. And boy, does it just come together really nicely. And then sometimes I'll start to break the rules a little bit, or I'll change things up a little bit.
Right.
But knowing the direction to go really helps. And so you can use a book like that as 20 Master Plots by Ronald Tobias. We'll put a link in the description of this podcast.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and get your own copy. It's been around for years, so even finding a used copy is very easy nowadays.
You've probably had that book for 25 years.
Easily. Maybe 30.
It's one he will never sell.
Right.
He will always have it in his library. And I was also going to mention, if you are interested in a specific genre and you want just to kind of get your juices flowing, do a search for tropes for that genre. Now, I know tropes, sometimes that word gets a bad rap and people kind of roll their eyes at the idea of tropes. But look at what the tropes are for whatever genre you're looking for or that you're wanting to write, and really kind of let that get those creative juices flowing. Start thinking about it. Think about maybe, okay, this is what's expected. What can I do that might be a little bit different without completely running out of my lane? Let me stay in my lane with my genre, but maybe give it a little bit more flavor, add that spice.
So ask yourself, what is your book's genre? This is your homework for the week, right? This is your challenge. What is your book's genre? What are the rules or the conventions of that genre? And are you obeying those rules? And if so, see how it can all come together. If you're not obeying some, see if you can work it in there, because you need to understand the rules before you can break them.
Absolutely.
But once you've done that, then we think you've got a good book to jump off with.
Absolutely. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and we hope that you will rate it. Leave us a rating if you would. If this is something that you enjoy, we really appreciate that. And definitely hit that bell so that you will know when we drop new episodes. We would really appreciate that, and we'd love to just connect with you. And definitely reach out to us at writingmomentum.com. We would be really happy to hear like what you're doing and what you're working on, and leave a comment below or email us. We just really want to be here to help writers.
That's right. Because remember, we are not in this alone. This is not something, if you're writing and you think that this is something that you're supposed to do alone, that's not the way we do writing nowadays. Nowadays, we get a lot more done. We add momentum to our writing because we do it together. Because together,
we have writing momentum.
Bye-bye.